This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our April Board of Selectmen meeting. I'm Mike Frieda, joined by our second selectman, Mr. William Piper, and our third selectwoman, Ms. Sally Boemi. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to ask everyone to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 2, are there any public comments to this evening's agenda? Mary White.
Mary White, Summer Lane. Relative to number 15 on the agenda, I was wondering if after the discussion by the board on the ordinance to provide a tax abatement for surviving spouses of firefighters and police officers who died while in the line of duty, if the public would be allowed to make comment on this.
So the way it's going to work tonight is absolutely yes. However, we are going to vote on a document tonight to bring to the town meeting. We still will entertain public comment on the item number 15, but that should not suggest it's going to change what we've already decided to bring to the town meeting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for those watching on TV, at the town meeting, which will be held April 29th, that'll be the point where everyone could get back up and offer their opinions, and that would be the meeting that would decide. I'm looking in the camera, by the way, if you see me up there. So I'm looking at, so we have, ladies and gentlemen, we have heads turning, wondering why I'm looking at you watching on North Haven TV. So, but what I was saying was that at the town meeting, the town residents' feedback at the meeting could possibly precipitate a change in the draft ordinance that we're going to work on tonight and we're going to vote on tonight. So you have two opportunities, Mary. Tonight, you certainly could comment, even though we'll have already voted. And then on April 29th, that'll be the meeting where the rest of the public can come in and offer their opinions, and we can make a decision, if necessary, to change it that night.
Okay, so the decision, if the board wants to change it based on public comment at the public meeting,
yes,
town meeting, the changes would be made that night at that town meeting?
Yeah, so here's...
And then the vote would be taken.
Right, so there's two schools of thought on this, and we have to get the town attorney's opinion on this. We think that it could be amended at the town meeting and then re-voted on. But we think the town attorney is going to say, to comply with the charter, you have to close the town meeting down, redraft it, call another, at the next Board of Selectmen meeting, we have to review the draft, okay, and then go back and call another town meeting for a second town meeting.
Okay.
So we're going to work that out. We like to think up here that we can do it the way you just suggested, but I think the town attorney is going to say it, we have to do it the other way.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor, thanks.
Which I think makes sense too, because that maybe it should come back again, because, you know, if changes are going to be made, we talk about them, but then after it gets actually drafted again, it might be, well, we didn't think that exactly what we meant or agreed on, so it's probably better to have it done correctly. You know, come back to another, as Mike was suggesting, another Board of Selectmen meeting, have it on paper like we're looking at tonight, where everybody can see it, and then, so I know we're not used to going back to successive town, meetings like that to vote on stuff, but I think it is important. I think we'd all agree that it's important to get it correctly.
Mike, can I comment,
please? Yes, go ahead, Val.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I believe if it was a minor change, maybe like a small typo or something, but it wasn't changing the context of the ordinance, it could be amended at the town meeting.
All right, good.
But if you are changing the ordinance with any substantive changes, you would have to go back, because what we are making noticed 5 days before the meeting, the ordinance that will be voted on is what gets noticed and publicized. So someone could make the argument that, well, I wasn't aware that the changes were made at the town meeting. It's a different ordinance than what was posted.
Yep.
and publicized, so they could say, I was fine with what was posted, so I didn't go to the meeting, but I wasn't fine with the changes that were made, because
Right.
I don't know if I'm making myself clear,
No,
but
I
that's,
know exactly what you're saying.
yes.
Yeah, I just recall in June of 2018, at the supernumerary, the town meeting to pass the supernumerary ordinance, we did have an amendment that was made, seconded, and incorporated. Two duties of the supernumeraries were removed. So maybe removal of something, I don't know. But I will leave it, maybe we did it improperly, or there was an exception in that case. But I'll leave it to the town attorney's interpretation of the charter on that. So if we have to, let's do it right. I mean, this is our fourth Board of Selectmen meeting, trying to get it right. We have a new ordinance that we're going to be looking at, which I think was done in consideration of last month's comments, especially from the Fire Commission, as well as some emails that we received.
Yeah, so let me just comment on that. So I know we're jumping ahead, but Mary teed it up for us. So, you know, what we're trying to do and what I'm trying to do in particular, and to be very candid, ladies and gentlemen, that we're trying to balance the public feedback. This is the fourth draft ordinance now that we've come up with tonight. Trying to balance that with the fact that there are families who are patiently waiting, who've lost loved ones in the line of duty, patiently waiting for an answer on this. And that's difficult sometimes. We want to make sure that the public is heard, and we've, as Sally mentioned, Mr. Mike Patton and Mr. Gary George submitted comments and suggestions and recommendations. We sent that out to Ms. Bohemia and Mr. Piper. We have it in the packets tonight, and that's all part of this contemplation on our part. But somewhere along the line, we're going to have to make a decision. And my goal is to have the decision made at the town meeting sooner than later.
I agree. We're trying to do something good for people.
Yes.
So,
Okay, any other public comments to the agenda? Item number 3, the approval of the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes on March 7th.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second that approval of those minutes.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We're going to dispense with my overview tonight with slides. We have a lot to discuss here tonight. I know the public wants to comment, as Mary mentioned. The one thing I'd like to say is a reminder. Tuesday night, April 9th, 7 o'clock at the high school. That will be the first meeting where I'll be presenting the budget to the residents. I'm encouraging everyone to come. This is the most difficult budget season we've ever been faced with here, and I'm going to be laying it out in great detail Tuesday night, April 9th, as to where we are. So I hope everybody attends. Thank you. All right, Sally.
Yes, I put this on item number 5. Actually, it's an issue that I raised at the Board of Finance meeting in March when I was talking about large increases in municipal budgeting, and I talked about the issue of regionalization, which you seemed interested in, and you encouraged me to put it on the agenda because you had some comments and some discussion. So that's what I did, because not only our budget, but many municipal budgets are growing by leaps and bounds. And we cracked the $100 million plateau with our budget in the 18-19 fiscal year, and the current proposed budget that will be presented at the public hearing on April 9th is at 130. And this is a common trend in many municipalities, and I believe that in the long term, regionalization of certain municipal government services is the only logical and workable way to keep taxes in check. And so you wanted to make some comments on my point.
Yeah, I thought you came up with a great question at that Board of Finance meeting, and that's why this is on the agenda. So, you know, most of you know me as North Haven's first selectman, but what you may not know, I tried to portray this a couple of months ago here, is I sit on numerous statewide boards and commissions, many of which I'm chairman of. And this particular subject is a subject that's being spoken about all over Connecticut, and I'm directly involved with this. And the state's position is that they're leaving it up to the municipalities to determine what levels of regionalization that would make sense on a town-by-town and a city-by-city basis. What most people don't know is that across the state of Connecticut, there's 5 council of governments. And the one here in this area is the South Central Region Council of Governments. Now, I'm coming off my second stint as chairman of the Regional Council of Governments, which includes 15 mayors, first selectmen, and town managers in the South Central region. We're the second largest COG, we call it COG, Council of Governments. So through the Council of Governments, we've identified that there are certain areas that we will consider trying to regionalize on. One may be the purchase regionally of capital equipment, whether it be police cars or fire trucks, to try to leverage aggregate purchasing to get the best possible price by the utilization of a higher volume of vehicles being purchased. Secondly is if we can coordinate it, and this is more difficult because a lot of the cities and towns, they're not necessarily either self-insured or on Anthem insurance. Can we, this is a rhetorical question that we're asking ourselves at these meetings, can we aggregately purchase health care insurance to get the lowest possible rate? You're going to see next Tuesday night that I'm going to be presenting a 20 to 26% increase on employee health insurance, which is staggering for the town. So we're also looking at, because there's a shortage across the state of building officials, assessors, town engineers, we're also looking at seeing if we can coordinate a regional sharing of those positions. Now that would have to be bargained through the unions because those positions are all union related. So we're looking at that as an option. So as an example, if there's an assessor's position and 2 towns can share that position, and let's say the salary of the position is $100,000, then 2 towns could share the assessor. The assessor could go back and forth to 2 different municipalities, and each town would say $50,000 because it would be a shared cost. So to summarize, health insurance, assessors, building officials, town engineers, the aggregate purchase of equipment, fire trucks, police cars, other rescue vehicles, public works vehicles, snow plows. So there are these areas that we're trying to collaborate on. But I'll tell you what's not going to happen, because the state will never mandate it. Unlike New York and some of the other states across the United States, there's a county form of government. I don't think it's going to happen here. It's not going to happen because there's 169 cities and towns. Each of them have their individual town charters. Each of them have their own individual rules and regulations. And many of them, like us, have a town meeting form of government. So to try to institute a county form of government in the state of Connecticut would be nearly impossible. And that's why the state will never mandate it. The state is encouraging it. The state is offering resources to help us. The state, 2 of the resources are a statewide insurance policy and a statewide pension system. But here in North Haven, that's not something I'm looking at. I would consider aggregating the purchase of health insurance, provided that the coverage remains the same for all of the employees with no changes. That's the only way I would agree to it. Because before I got here, apparently there was a tremendous ruckus where health insurance was changed, the networks changed, the provider changed, and it really created a lot of problems here in North Haven. We're not going to do that for as long as I'm here, I can tell you that. So hope that answers it, Sally.
Yeah, you mentioned first capital equipment, and in that regard, you talked about coordinating purchases of equipment, presumably to save money. In the area of public works, what about coordinating the use of public works equipment? Because we own some very expensive pieces of public works equipment.
Right.
North Branford does. I mean, you know, we're still fairly small towns. So what about sharing not just the purchase price? Because you're talking about aggregating purchases to get a better deal. I'm talking about splitting the costs and splitting the use. Is that something that would be possible? Because not every one of our huge pieces
Right.
of equipment is being used every day.
Right.
That I know.
Yeah, I suppose that could be, but the other thing that's happened, and I'll use the last tornado as an example here in North Haven. So because I have relationships all over the state, particularly with the mayors all over. So when we had a problem here in North Haven where 40% of the town was out of power for days, and we had limbs and trees and debris all over streets. So I had 3 mayors call me up and they sent public works trucks down here. Mike, we want to help you. From as far away as East Hartford. So we have ended up, because of that, Sally, creating a level of mutual aid that we see like in our fire departments and some of our police work. So to do that could potentially jeopardize the mutual aid that goes on back and forth. But I think it's something that we should consider.
Because there are some unique, specialized, and very expensive pieces of equipment.
Right.
And, you know, for all these municipalities to have one. That was something else that I thought about in addition, when you mentioned coordinating purchase.
Right.
I thought maybe coordinating use. So that,
Possible.
so at least, and that's what I.
The problem maybe though is trying to determine like the basis for that. Is it based on, you know, population usage? You know,
Yeah. Well,
you know, if the equipment's going to cost $50,000, how do we split the cost initially? And you know, we're going to split just 50-50, or it's always hard to predict. So, you know, but again, it's a good idea. It's just it's easier said than done.
Now, let me explain. We have recently, maybe it was last year, this ties into your question. We purchased a large, for lack of a better word, a Hummer, an emergency mobile vehicle, right? And 3 or 4 towns, including us, we split the cost.
There you go.
So that's being shared right now. It's an emergency mobile Hummer type vehicle. So, and one last point, 'cause we'll move on with the agenda, and
Sure.
we can always talk about this.
Yeah.
One of these statewide panels that I sit on is a statewide law enforcement panel. I've been appointed by 2 separate governors. And what we do is we support a regionalized approach of things like accident reconstruction. We've entered into agreements here with the police and other police agencies that if there is an accident in North Haven, people from East Haven will come in, from as far away as Madison, and we'll supply resources out there. So we have these regional accident reconstruction teams. I've also been appointed by the state to be a task force member on street takeovers for ATVs that are taking over our streets. I happen to be in one in July of this past year over at Route 5 and Route 22. 400 cars and ATVs just hijacked our streets. So myself, the mayors of West Haven, New Haven, Guilford, East Haven, Hamden, we're part of this regional task force committee that is designed to stop street takeovers. And here's what we're doing. I'm going to tell you what happened at a press conference. So I was one of the featured speakers at the press conference. All the news media were lined up, all the different stations. So I was the second person to speak. The mayor of New Haven turned it over to me. And we were in a Butler building in New Haven. And in the Butler building, there was ATVs that had been confiscated. Part of our work on this is, and I'm going to explain how I explained it in the press conference, that I said, for those people out there who may be thinking of taking over our streets in this region, we're standing here with all of our police chiefs from across the region. And I'm standing here with all of my fellow colleagues, mayors and first selectmen. So we'd like to send you a message, and I hope you would consider it. You see them back of me right here? In back of me is all of these ATVs that have been confiscated. You'll be fined $1,000. The vehicle will be confiscated. And I said to the camera, I went just like this, ladies and gentlemen. I think I said this in one of the past meetings. And we're going to crush these ATVs, crush them. Police chief in New Haven came up after and said, that was the best press conference I've ever seen. And that's what we're going to do. So we here today are faced with more problems, all of us, all of our cities and towns, than we've ever been faced with before. We're taking a demonstrative approach on a lot of these problems to solve these problems. And that story right there, folks, is one of them. So.
Your story about the ATVs reminded me, isn't there a coordinated SWAT team?
Yes.
With different, us and East Haven, and so there are elements of regionalization
Yeah.
out there. So what I'm going to ask you is, because I remember attending some COG meetings years ago, the next time you see an agenda that might discuss the issues of regionalization in some form, if you could have Val let me know, I'd
Yeah.
love to go. Are the meetings still near McDonald's?
Yeah.
Up
Yep.
on the second floor of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
One last point.
I'd love to go. Thank you.
You just triggered another thought.
Ah.
And then we'll move on, folks, with the agenda. One last point. So this past weekend, and this is, I guess, a regionalized approach. So we are working with the FBI and the state police and our North Haven police. We have a sophisticated intel system in place. So we got word that there was going to be a street takeover in southeastern Connecticut. And the intel suggested the route, and it was going to come through North Haven. We had galvanized resources in advance. However, because the people who were involved with the street takeover, got word that the intel had spread, because of this regionalized approach, we've been able to prevent two street takeovers here in North Haven. One was last fall on Washington Avenue, 3 months after the one I was caught in. So we are regionalizing to a certain extent. However, what we just mentioned has yet to show us a tangible return in terms of cost savings like it would show with fire trucks, police trucks, health insurance, and some of the other issues I mentioned earlier. So thank you for listening.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on.
Yes, we have resignations and appointments.
Yes.
So I will start with number 6. I will make a motion to accept the resignation of Marie Devlin, 18 Carina Road, effective March 1st, 2024, from the Board of Education, term to expire November 30th, 2027.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second Marie's resignation.
Okay. In discussion, Marie, if you're watching, I'd like to thank you very much for your service to North Haven's Board of Education, and we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next.
Motion to accept the resignation of Ralph Black Jr., 257 Clintonville Lane, from the Library Board of Directors, term to expire December 31st, 2025.
A second?
All right, we have a motion and a second in the discussion. Ralph was a former fire chief in New Haven at one time and was a North Haven resident. We understand he's moving. Ralph, I'd like to say thank you very much. I know that's what you wanted. You mentioned to me many years ago you wanted to sit on the library board, and I thank you for your years of service. All those in favor?
Aye. Next, I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Dale Sheridan, 94 Garfield Avenue, from the Water Pollution Control Authority, term to expire December 31st, 2024.
I'll second her resignation, the motion to accept her resignation.
Dale, if you're watching, I know you've served many years on that commission. I know I'm part of that commission, but you served faithfully for all those years. I'd like to thank you very much. We'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And before we move to the next one, I've had discussions with the new DTC Chair, Lori Manzer, who's here. So Lori, you have, as we talked about, this will be an opening, so you come to us with a recommendation then. Okay?
Hi, thank you, Selectmen, Rita. So my recommendations, do you want me to do both of them?
No, well, we have your recommendations on here,
Yes.
but for the next meeting, if you have a recommendation for the
I
WPCA,
do.
okay? Okay, very good. So that would have to be addressed, because it's not on this agenda.
Yes, not on
At the next meeting, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move to the appointments.
And on the appointment side, I'll make a motion for the appointment of Michelle Guglielmo, 26 Curtis Court, to the Board of Education to fill the unexpired term of Marie Devlin, set to expire on November 30th, 2027.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Michelle, welcome aboard. Thank you for your service. All those in favor?
You didn't
Okay.
ask for any other discussion.
Oh, well, okay, discussion, go right ahead. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
I read Ms. Guglielmo's resume, and it's very impressive. And so I will wish her well on the Board of Education, and I'm sure that she'll serve well. Again, she has an impressive resume. But I do want to take this particular opportunity to just make a statement.
Sure.
I had suggested to the chair of the DTC that they consider an Hispanic citizen to be appointed
Okay.
to the Board of Ed. The two people considered, both were qualified, but no Hispanic. So I just want to give some statistics, and actually I can just show them to you. You can pass it down to Bill. It just shows the 2010 census figures for the four major segments of our population and the 2020. And as you can see, the Hispanic population has gone from 4.2% to 7.1%, a 69% increase, and no other segment of our population has increased anywhere near that level. And so I would like to just take this opportunity, since we're just talking about filling a position on the Board of Ed, to urge the DTC and the RTC, as a vacancy may come up, to consider appointing an Hispanic. The Hispanic population is quickly growing in town, and I think that it's easy to say you believe in diversity and equity and inclusion, but to take action toward those high ideals is something else. And so I would just like to take this opportunity to hope that the powers to be on both sides of the political aisle will consider the makeup of our town the next time vacancies need to be filled, or the next time committees meet to endorse candidates for election. But with that said, again, I was very impressed with Michelle, and I know she'll do a good job. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to make that statement at this time. Thank you. If you want to
All right.
call for the vote.
You will call for the vote. Thank you for that. Sally? Bill, anything you'd like to say? Or-
No,
Okay, we're good.
Welcome Michelle to, and her willingness to serve on the Board of Education.
Okay, so we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome aboard, Michelle, okay?
Michelle's here tonight?
She's right there.
As I thought. I didn't want to be presumptuous, but, so I'm glad you came in person. Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good. Next, I'll make a motion for the appointment of Genevieve Cabrera, 42 George Street, to the Community Services Commission, term to expire December 31st, 2026.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second her appointment.
All right, Genevieve, if you're watching, of course, we're working together on another project here in town, so I appreciate your willingness to serve, and we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome aboard. Next.
And then the last appointment is I'll make a motion for the appointment of Robert Nielsen, 15 Satcham Drive, to the Commission on Aging, term to expire December 31st, 2026.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Rob, thank you, if you're watching, for your willingness to serve on this commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, who'd like to read the resolution?
I'll do 12, please. Which is to consider and act upon a fair housing resolution for the town of North Haven. And it reads, Fair Housing Resolution, Town of North Haven, whereas all persons are afforded a right to full and equal housing opportunities in the neighborhood of their choice. And whereas federal fair housing laws require that all individuals, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin, be given equal access to all housing-related opportunities, including rental and homeownership opportunities, and be allowed to make free choices regarding housing location. And whereas Connecticut fair housing laws require that all individuals, regardless of race, creed, color, national origin, ancestry, sex, marital status, age, lawful source of income, familiar status, learning disability, physical or mental disability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression, be given equal access to all housing-related opportunities, including rental and home ownership opportunities, and be allowed to make free choices regarding housing location. And whereas the town of North Haven is committed to upholding these laws and realizes that these laws must be supplemented by an affirmative statement publicly endorsing the right of all people to full and equal housing opportunities in neighborhood of their choice. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of North Haven hereby endorses a fair housing policy to ensure equal opportunity for all persons to rent, purchase, obtain financing, and enjoy all other housing-related services of their choice on a non-discriminatory basis as provided by state and federal law. And be it further resolved that the Chief Executive Officer of the town of North Haven or his designated representative is responsible for responding to and assisting any person who alleges to be the victim of an illegal discriminatory housing practice in the town of North Haven, and for advising such person of the right to file a complaint with the State of Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, CHRO, or the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, or to seek assistance from the Connecticut Fair Housing Center, Legal Services, or other fair housing organizations to protect his or her right to equal housing opportunities.
Okay,
So I move that resolution as read.
very good. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion as read by Sally.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next.
Okay, item number 13. I'm not sure, warn a special
Yep,
meeting?
that's what we're doing.
Warn a special meeting, the town meeting, to consider and vote upon whether to designate an additional polling location for the conduct of early voting in connection with the 2024 primary to be held on August 13th, 2024, and the general election to be held on November 5th, 2024. Resolved that the Board of Selectmen hereby call for a special meeting of the town meeting to be held on Thursday, April 11th, 2024, in the upstairs conference room, number 1, North Haven Memorial Town Hall, 18 Church Street, North Haven, Connecticut, to consider and vote upon a resolution in accordance with Connecticut Public Act 23-5, determining whether to designate a second polling location for the conduct of early voting in connection with the primary to be held on August 13th, 2024, and the general election to be held on November 5th, 2024.
Right, we did this a few weeks ago for the primary,
Right.
and that town meeting was restricted just to the primary.
Right.
So I guess now we are doing the same thing for any primaries that may occur in August, or, of course, the election that will definitely occur in November. Am I right?
Yes, right.
Good
Yes.
guess. All right.
All right, so we have a motion? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion
Okay.
for that resolution.
Yeah, I'll second the motion as read.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next.
Okay, we are going to call for the annual budget town meeting to be held on Monday, May 13th, 2024, at 7 PM in the auditorium of the North Haven High School, 221 Elm Street, North Haven, Connecticut, to conduct the following business. 1, to consider and act upon the recommendation of the Board of Finance to take action regarding the budget for the fiscal year July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. And 2, to establish the due date and number of installments for the payment of property taxes, real estate, personal property, motor vehicle, and supplemental motor vehicle in accordance with sections 12-142 and 12-144A of the Connecticut General Statutes. And 3, pursuant to section 7-7 of the Connecticut General Statutes, to adjourn said town meeting at its conclusion and to submit the question concerning the adoption of a budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025, to a vote by paper ballot on Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, including the establishment of the exact hours of voting at referendum pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 7-9B, that voting will take place between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. at the following North Haven polling place. All districts at the Mildred Wakely Rec Center, 7 Lindsley Street. The aforementioned recommendations shall be placed on paper ballots as the following question. Shall the town of North Haven, in accordance with the recommendation of the Board of Finance, approve and adopt a budget consisting of $64,972.728, excuse me, I'm going to say it again, $64,972,728 for the Board of Education, and $65,382,423 for the town government, for a total amount of $130,355,151 for the fiscal year July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. Voters approving said question will vote yes, and those opposing said question will vote no. So,
Okay.
there we go.
Good. So we have a motion? That's a motion, right? Your motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we call the meeting as read.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none?
Yes, if
Yes,
there's
go ahead.
any changes in the budget, do we have to recall this?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
we do.
So
Yep.
this is in the event that the budget doesn't change, because we have to do it a certain amount of time
It just
before.
makes it easier. It avoids having to call a special meeting. But if it does change after the public hearing, then of course we'll have to call a special meeting and recall
If it changes after the Board of Finance meeting on the 17th.
Right.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
So I have to give Valerie a shout out here because, she really manages this very well internally. These meetings, the posting, she's an expert on it. She does a fabulous job and we appreciate her efforts here. She does really a great
Yeah,
job. with this.
the requirements for the days when it has to be in the paper and how many days before things, like budget books have to be at the town hall. There's quite a bit of detailed regulations hanging over your head all the time. Poor Val, really.
She's got it down there.
She
knows
does it very well.
Thank you.
And so this is a requirement in that regard to get the call out
Right.
in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we have a vote yet.
No, we're going to call
Oh,
for that
excuse
vote.
me.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you.
So 15 is the
Yes.
discussion concerning proposed ordinance to provide a tax abatement for surviving spouses of firefighters and police officers who died while in the line of duty. So, here we are.
Yes. So before we have Bill and Sally also comment, just to summarize what I mentioned earlier, we've received a lot of feedback from the public, and in the packets tonight, Mr. Gary George and Mr. Mike Patton came to us with suggestions. I know Mary called the office today. Mary White is here tonight. She spoke with Val for a while. So we're on our fourth draft right now. And would one of you like to summarize where we are? We've taken the doctor out. I'll tee it up that way. So,
Well, the doctor is included with other people, I thought.
so I don't think, but you might be right. Take a look at
Val?
it, Val. I thought we removed that for the fourth draft.
Unless I have a different draft, I have so many. Well, maybe when people hear the whole thing, it will make more sense.
I think everyone here has a copy of the fourth draft.
They have the ordinance. I also think it's, excuse me?
Yeah, we have them here, right, Val?
Yeah, there's some here.
I also think it's important to have the statute. You said, Val, you provided the statute for everyone?
I do have
Yes.
the statute is also here.
Because the statute really controls much of what's in the ordinance.
That's right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and the statute, for once, well, I shouldn't say for once, but luckily, the statute is very short and clear, as opposed to some statutes
Yes.
we've tried to decipher, which were long and impossible to understand. This one is very short and clear, so that's why we thought everyone should have a copy of the ordinance to see the restrictions that, the rules that we must abide by in order to make this ordinance valid. So,
Okay.
That's what I
If
thought.
you look on the marked up copy,
yeah,
you could see where what he deleted, and that does say about the determination by a medical doctor, that came out, but what's left, what remained, was the language, in the event that the Board of Selectmen find that a determination is necessary. So I think it was like a safety net type of thing. Right?
right. Well, that's how it, but, so does licensed medical professional remain in that blue
Well,
paragraph?
he left it in, but that's
Yeah.
up for you guys to decide.
Yeah,
He left it in, but,
well, that's, would only be if it got to that point.
right.
Right. Well, Bill, do you want me to go?
Yeah, I think it gives, if, I think the language in there now allows that, to the extent that unfortunately a fireman or police officer is passing is obviously in the performance of duty. I think it says here, that the board, in the event that the Board of Selectmen finds that the determination is necessary to conclude that that was in the performance of duty. Only in that case, then, where it's not obvious, would we potentially need other parties involved, like the chief, the fire chief, police chief, fire police commission, town attorney, and licensed medical professional to further help draw a conclusion. So I think in some cases it may be necessary, but in all cases it won't be necessary to have a
Exactly.
medical professional involved.
Yeah.
Well, I actually put a lot of this, suggested a lot of this language because there were concerns at our March meeting by some fire commissioners, one of which is here, and because well, let me just say, one change that I started with, that I proposed that has been incorporated, is that we've changed the title to ordinance to provide a tax abatement for real property taxes for the surviving spouses of police officers and firefighters who died while in the performance of duties. It used to be in the line of duty, but I thought, and I assume town council agreed because it's in here, that since the statute uses the term in the performance of duties, we should stick with using the statutory language. So, but everything else regarding definition is pretty much the same. The paragraph that caused the most problem, well, there were really two. One was the one I'm going to read now, and the other one had to do with whether driving to and from work would be included or not. But the performance of duty death means the death occurs while the firefighter or police officer is performing an action solely related to performance of their regular work or as part of it. So that's the same. It does not include deaths that could just have likely occurred while not in the performance of such duties. Now, that language is in every ordinance that I've seen. And I originally thought, well, how is someone or who is going to conclude whether it is a death that could just have likely occurred while not in the performance of duty? And that's where I added consulting with a licensed medical professional. And there was a lot of problems with that. So here's what we put in instead, because sometimes, folks, it's going to be really easy to know if it's in the performance of duty. Obviously, if a police officer responds to a domestic dispute at a home and is shot and killed, I don't think we need to have anybody meet and determine if that's in the performance of duties. So what this says is, in the event that the Board of Selectmen finds that a determination is necessary to conclude that the death was in performance of duties, the first selectman will consult with the applicable chief and commission, along with the town attorney and a licensed medical professional engaged by the town to reach a consensus conclusion. The first selectman shall present the conclusion to the Board of Selectmen for a final decision. Travel to and from the place of business is not considered in the performance of duties. That sentence, travel to and from the place of business is not considered in the performance of duties, was in the original draft number 1 that the town attorney presented to us, and it is in all of the other ordinances that I've seen in other towns that have adopted ordinances pursuant to this 12-81X. So this language about the Board of Selectmen and the first selectman consulting with the chief and the commission and the town attorney and a licensed medical professional was put in to get more people involved and certainly get the chief and the commission involved, which is, I think, is what the commissioner's letter that we saw last month was concerned about. But should that decision be made just by the chief and the commission? I don't think so. I think you need the town attorney in there. I think you need the first selectman in there. And I think you need a medical opinion. And because of the language that all of these ordinances have, it does not include deaths that could just have likely occurred while not in the performance of such duties. So I think this additional language is an appropriate compromise that incorporates more people into the decision-making process in the event that a determination is necessary. actually, I think that it accommodates the need for input from the chief and the commission, the applicable chief or applicable commission, whether it's the fire or police department. So that's what that was all about. The language travel to and from the place of business is not considered in the performance of duties, is still in there. I assume the town attorney believes that is necessary to comply with the statute. I mean, I didn't offer any changes on that. And so, you know, I also want people to understand that whatever decision this municipality makes on the applicability of any situation would never affect the eligibility for many other federal and state programs that are available for these unfortunate, tragic situations. For example, the federal government has a public safety officers benefits program, which is at 42 USC 3796. And that is a one-time financial payment of $283,000, currently $283,385 as a one-time financial compensation to an eligible survivor of a public safety officer whose deaths are the direct or proximate result of a traumatic injury sustained in the line of duty. So, and there's also state programs, there's life insurance programs, there's workers' comp. So whatever we decide for the applicability of this ordinance authorized by this statute would have no bearing on any other programs that the survivor would be eligible for. And there are many. I just named one. You know, workers' comp has would also be applicable, and that has a different standard. It has to be within the scope of employment. So I don't want people to think what happens here affects any other rights. It does not. And the final change that I requested that I see has been incorporated here is a definition of surviving spouse. Because clearly the statute says that only a surviving spouse is eligible for the benefit. Now, originally, we put in surviving spouse as a person legally married to a police officer or firefighter who dies and was living in North Haven and legally married to the officer at the time of his or her death. So we've expanded that a little bit. Surviving spouse means the person who was a resident of the town of North Haven and legally married to or in a legally recognized marriage with the police officer or firefighter at the time of the police officer's or firefighter's death. And I suggested that language, or in a legally recognized marriage, in response to the email you cited before from Mr. George, who I've known for many, many years. And what this is about, ladies and gentlemen, is common law marriage. Common law marriage is not valid or recognized in Connecticut. A couple cannot cohabitate and consider themselves in a common law marriage in Connecticut. It is not valid, it is not recognized. However, there is a narrow exception to that rule, and that is if two people begin and establish a common law marriage in another state, and there are 9 of them right now, in another state that does recognize common law marriages, and as long as that couple complies with that state's rules to establish a common law marriage, and then they relocate to Connecticut. They come here with a valid common law marriage established in another state, then Connecticut will recognize that marriage. So by adding the language married to or in a legally recognized marriage, it would include a surviving spouse who entered into a common law marriage with the deceased firefighter or police officer in another state under their rules, and as long as it was validly entered into and they relocated here, we, the state of Connecticut and us as a municipality, would recognize that as a validly entered into common law marriage. It's called giving full faith and credit to the laws of another state. Full faith and credit is actually a provision of the United States Constitution. But again, no common law, there is no common law in Connecticut. And living together does not, in Connecticut, merely living together, no matter how long, does not trigger any financial rights or obligations. So it's only if you entered into one in another state and moved here later would we recognize it. The 9 states that have it are Kansas, Rhode Island, Iowa, New Hampshire, Colorado, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, and Montana. So that's the research I did in response to Mr. George's interesting and important email, and why I added or in a legally recognized marriage. As rare as it might be, it is in there, and it would be a very rare occurrence, but it's there. So those were the 3 changes that I suggested that town attorney has incorporated, and that's why I did it. And so I'm all ears for your comments and willing to discuss or modify to your wishes.
I know, Bill, you have some comments, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I did like the change of performance, change from line of duty to performance of duty instead of, and some of the other samples we had from other towns did use line of duty, which is probably where we started from, but.
Yeah, I know it was, but I don't understand it because
Might be
that's not
better
what
to
the
keep-
statute says. Right.
Keep with the statute. And I think sometimes, I think as I was trying to say earlier, the change to needing a licensed medical professional engaged by the town is quite often not necessary, and I think that is a good change, that there are some situations that I think that determination could be made that it was in the performance of duty without always getting a medical opinion.
Right.
So, and if we go back to the statute, it's almost like, and looking at some of the other samples of the ordinances from the other town, sometimes maybe making it more complicated is probably not necessarily better, because it may actually create, if you look at the statute, it is very simple.
Right.
And so we don't want to make it overly complicated to make a determination, if a determination can be made just on the face of what's happened. So I'm okay with the changes.
Right, that's why I said if it's needed, and you probably read my notation that
Right.
most of the time I don't think it will be, so.
Yeah, I agree. Most of the time, it will not need to be that way, exactly.
But we have a system in place where the first selectman will consult with these various parties, and I think that's a good idea.
If needed.
If needed.
If needed.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And what
yes.
about the extending the surviving spouse to include or in a legally recognized for the common law?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Bill, you okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so.
Because that's gonna happen rarely, if ever.
Right, but he seemed concerned about common law marriages. He acknowledged that they're not recognized in Connecticut, but that they can be recognized in other states. So I looked into it and did my best to accommodate that very rare situation.
Did you both review Mr. Patton's language also, the I put that, we had that in the packets also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've continued to include, which I think was important to me, we did pick up both employed and volunteer firefighters, full or part-time, and any form of police, not only here in North Haven, but serving in other towns or at the state level or some other law enforcement capacity, that are, residents of North Haven. So I think we've, made it broad enough to include anybody in, who is serving in fire, police, EMT, paramedic capacity, here or elsewhere in the state, to include them, including school resource officers. So I think all those things are, still contained in the language that we've got here.
Right, yes. Those definitions didn't change at all. And I think people have to understand that it was a major expansion that we did. In our first draft, it was limited to people who worked for the North Haven Police Department or the North Haven Fire Department. And many towns, I would say half, and if it's not half, it's more than half. At least half of the ordinances that I looked at were limited to that, where they had to not only live in their town, but work for that department. And we've expanded it to work for any department. And that's a great expansion. And we also added the volunteers, which was not in the original document because it wasn't, I don't know why it wasn't, but it wasn't. But that, bringing in, including residents who work in other municipalities is I think, for me, the biggest plus that I'm most proud of, that we are
Doing it.
not only honoring firefighters and police officers that live and work in North Haven, but those that live, they have to live in North Haven. We can't abate taxes of people who live elsewhere.
Right.
So, to me, that's a major expansion.
Right. Before we move on, I'm not sure if the people watching and the residents who are here tonight know the statute that we're talking about. So I'm going to read it, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Because the ordinances that we do have to follow the statute. So this is the statute. It's section 12-81X. And it's municipal option to abate taxes of surviving spouse of police officer, firefighter, or emergency medical technician. The legislative body of any municipality may establish by ordinance, key word there is may, which we're doing, may establish by ordinance a program to abate all or a portion of the property taxes due with respect to real property owned and occupied as the principal residence of the surviving spouse of a police officer, firefighter, or emergency medical technician who dies while in the performance of such officers, firefighters, or technician duties. That statute, once again, if you'd like to research it, 12-81X.
And let me just say, it says that we can abate all or a portion. Some municipalities only abate or forgive 50%.
That's right.
We are abating the entire
Full amount.
100%. And again, because people said, well, what about car taxes? We can't apply it to car taxes because, again, the statute is the controlling force. It says with respect to real property. So we don't have, abating taxes we just can't do that as a municipality. We need statutory authority. So in this case, the statutory authority is for this situation, and we are limited to every word in here. So, but that's another good thing that we're doing, is we're doing a 100% abatement,
100%.
meaning no real estate or house taxes for the eligible surviving spouse.
So before we call for a vote on this, I just want to remind the residents here tonight and those watching that Although we're going to call for a vote on the fourth draft, tonight, public comment can continue on this, and at the town meeting on April 29th, that is the time if there's any adjustments to be made. And if there are, then we have to adjourn the town meeting, come back to the Board of Selectmen, warn another town meeting. But before we warn the meeting, the Board of Selectmen has to incorporate the feedback if we choose to. The other thing that could happen at the town meeting is that if there's so many different conflicting opinions, we do have the option to call for a vote at the town meeting on the existing draft. So, and it could go yay, it could go nay. So we'll have to play that, I think, play that out that night.
Right, right.
So,
I mean, I can't imagine this, but there might be citizens out there who don't agree with the theory of the ordinance, you know?
yeah, I hope we don't see that, but
But
that could happen though, I suppose, right?
Anything could happen, as we've learned the past few months. But I think you're absolutely right in how you described that, so.
Are any other discussions on this bill?
So what do you think about, if you look at the statute, it does include emergency medical technicians, and we don't have, I was just looking like at Cromwell's. We don't have, I think our EMTs and paramedics are all part of our fire department.
Right, that's why the town council removed emergency medical technician from the ordinance, because
Yeah.
we don't have an ambulance company.
We don't
Our
have a volunteer
paramedics,
one.
well,
that
all
we're
our
municipal.
firefighters are EMTs and some are paramedics.
Right.
So they're covered, absolutely.
We took that out in the beginning because the fire chief and the fire department weighed in on that. So just what you said,
Yeah.
so that's why it's not in there, so.
So, but we did include fire and police, who are residents of North Haven, even if they're performing their duties in other municipalities. So should we include EMTs who are municipal employees in other municipalities, even though we don't have that situation in town, include them in the ordinance? If something happened to them, just like we would fire and police in other municipalities.
Well,
All right, this is an issue of first impression, so.
Yeah, I didn't
Well, I'll
know
tell you
about
what,
that
though.
till we reread
Well,
the
that's
ordinance.
interesting.
no, it is, and I'll tell you why. So, and we have members of the fire department here tonight, which I'm glad to see. So let's say on Bill's point, because it is a good point. In a mutual aid format, well, in mutual aid format, an EMT, you're saying, right, you want to include the EMT language.
Or, even in their own town, if they,
Right.
were, I think if I look at Cromwell's, any person who's certified as an emergency medical technician by the state of Connecticut's Office of Emergency Medical Services and is duly employed or a volunteer member of a municipal emergency medical service department. So serving the town of Cromwell, they were only limited to Cromwell, but we've expanded fire and police to any municipal arrangements.
But if one of our, right, Al, we'll have you up in public comment, okay? So hold that thought, though, okay? So let's just walk through this again. So in a mutual aid format, God forbid if one of our firefighters passes away, he's already part of the ordinance, right? His family's already part of the ordinance.
Absolutely.
So,
If he's a North Haven
if
resident.
he's North Haven resident.
Has to be a North
So-
Haven resident.
So, Bill, can you explain that point again, that question? So, at first glance, I think we've got it covered, but give me the exception as you see it. How do you see the difference?
We haven't defined emergency EMTs in our ordinance like other towns have, because we don't have a municipal EMT service. Our EMT service is incorporated in our fire.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But, so if a police officer or a fireman in another municipality who lived in North Haven tragically lost, he or she tragically lost their life, and they were residents of North Haven, their surviving spouse would qualify for this. But if an EMT who lived in North Haven and was a municipal employee of another municipality, and their EMT service would not be included, like a fire or a fireman or a firefighter or a police officer would be, who actually served in a different municipality but lived in North Haven.
Right, we took out town council removed EMT because we don't have them.
Right.
But here in North Haven, there could be individuals.
Yeah,
and
serving
he or
in other
He or
municipalities.
she may be an EMT, but not a firefighter or police officer serving another municipality. That's what he's saying. Because the statute does mention emergency medical technician.
So I think we've done the right thing by extending it to, if you're a North Haven resident and you serve not only in North Haven, but in other municipalities or at
You're
the state
covered.
level, we'll give you,
Yes.
the abatement would apply to you.
Yes.
And, so, it's just another thing to consider, or are we just, the eventuality of that happening may be fairly small or remote, because there may not even be somebody who currently is a resident that falls under those criteria, which we know is not the case for fire and police.
Well, we can't possibly know what everybody does in town
Right.
for a living. There
Right.
could very,
We do know that's true, at least for, I can name fire and police, but I'm not sure I can name
So-
EMT, who are residents of North Haven who serve in other towns.
Well, if we keep it the way it is and vote on it, we still have that option to discuss this with the general public, who will be more people than we see here. I'm interested in public comment here on this question tonight, but.
and you can run that
We could
Bill's
run that.
point by the town attorney.
Yeah,
Because even though we don't have EMT for
right.
here in North Haven, I see Bill's point. And we do want to make it as inclusive and expanded as possible to
Yeah.
cover anyone who comes within the statute. So that's why I found Bill's comment interesting. It's the first time we're discussing
Yeah,
it.
it is, yeah.
We could certainly even amend our fourth draft, I think, before the town meeting, because it has to be posted how many days? Well, you're the expert. 5 days.
You can still make changes, and if you have some time to make changes, you could agree to call the town meeting and then agree to make changes amongst yourself.
Can I just ask you a question, Val? Is this, which has it stamped on the bottom, is the same as this? Okay, because I find myself going, and that's kind of hard to do. So they're the same, this is just showing the red. Gotcha. All right, thank you.
All right, so here's the question. Does someone want to make a motion to add the language, or does someone want to make a motion to accept the document as it exists?
I think we're almost better accepting it as it is, and then maybe seeing, we have public comment today,
Okay.
and then also the town meeting. There's nothing that, precludes us
No.
from,
Right,
maybe
right.
hearing more instead of less.
And if you, when you talk about it with the town council, we still have time.
Add it.
Even if we vote on this tonight, we could still amend it up to 5 days before
That's right.
it's
Yes.
made available to the public.
All right.
Specifically asked council that question, if it had to be finalized tonight, and he said not.
Did not,
No.
okay. With that being said, is there a motion here?
I'll make a motion. What are we doing? We're recommending, I believe. That's all we can do is recommend.
Right,
Um,
the fourth draft document.
I'll make a motion that we recommend the fourth draft BOS copy dated April 4th, 2024. We recommend this ordinance for consideration and possible action at a special town meeting to consider, I'm reading 16 basically, at a special town meeting to consider a proposed ordinance to provide a tax abatement for surviving spouses of firefighters and police officers who died while in the line of duty. Well, we're changing it in the ordinance to performance. So I'll make a motion, resolve that the Board of Selectmen hereby call for a special town meeting to be held on Monday, April 29th, 2024, in the auditorium of the North Haven High School, 221 Elm Street, North Haven, at 7 p.m., to consider and act upon the following. To consider and act upon a resolution adopting the proposed ordinance to provide a tax abatement for surviving spouses of firefighters and police officers who died while in the line of duty. I'm going to make a motion to change that language,
I would suggest that.
because the proposed ordinance already changed it to conform to the statute by saying in the performance of duties. So I want to amend our call to say in the performance of duties rather than in the line of duty, and then I'll reread the motion. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second that amendment to the motion.
All right, any discussion? Other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next. Yep.
So I will reread my motion to consider and act upon a resolution adopting the proposed ordinance to provide a tax abatement for surviving spouses of firefighters and police officers who died while in the performance of duties.
And I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda is bond releases. Regarding P03-82, 133 Middletown Avenue. I'll make a motion. The amount of the original bond is $30,000. The current balance of the bond is $30,000. I'll make a motion to release the entire bond balance of $30,000 with the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Second?
All right, motion second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 18, I will make a motion to approve the property tax refunds reflected in our agenda.
I'll second those property tax refunds that have been
All right.
motioned by Sally.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The next, item 19, the next regularly scheduled meeting of this board is Thursday, May 2nd at 6:30 here at the upstairs conference room at Memorial Town Hall. And before we get into public comment, because I know everyone here wants to speak on the ordinance, I have committed to Mr. and Mrs. Fowler that they can go first in public comments. So Sally?
Thank you, Mike. Sally Fowler, 6 Scott Drive. In the almost 17 years that we have been talking about child abuse awareness, we've talked about statistics, incidences that have happened in our town, across our nation and our state. But tonight, what I want to talk about is the effect of abuse on the victim. And the abuse I'm going to talk about is not something horrendous, believe me, and I'm going to make this as short as possible because we've been here a while. The abuse I'm going to talk about is bullying, B-U-L-L-Y-I-N-G. Now, back in my day, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but back in my day, it was called a rite of passage if you survived bullying. Now, bullying was really easy back then for the person who was going to do it. All he had to do was call you Four Eyes if you wore glasses. He could shove you against a locker. He could maybe push you into a locker, slam the door. He could take the soap out of the shower room while we were taking a shower. He could do all sorts of little things like that, but then we had the internet come along, and that, I believe, is one of the worst cases of bullying there is. Bullies like power and control. That's the main goal. Now, someone doesn't wake up, a little kid doesn't wake up saying, I'm going to learn how to be a bully, because it's a learned behavior. Tragically, it has been shown that most bullies see bullying from a parent. Let me say that again. They learn it from a parent or a family member or a coach or maybe a teacher, or maybe they have a favorite TV idol or movie character that they like, and that's a bully, and that's who they emulate. Now, because he likes power, I'm saying he, it could be a girl too, likes power and control, they also need a gang behind them. They need the peer group that's going to say, hey, I'm supporting you. There's a famous scene in a TV movie called, Gary Cooper's in it. You remember that one, right, Ray? The one with Gary Cooper.
Part of the Yankees?
No, the Western. Do you remember it?
Oh, High Noon.
High Noon. The sheriff is walking down the street. No one's behind him. And the gang and the bully are standing right in front of him. And he says, no more. Town's not going to survive this way anymore. And all of a sudden, the gang behind him start disappearing. Because guess who's coming behind the sheriff? The whole town, who says, hey, we're taking back our town. And the bully just stands there. He has no more power, and his peers are gone. So that's how you get rid of a bully, in the Westerns anyway. Now, you're going to say, well, the bully, he has the power, he has the control, he has his peer group. Nothing really happens to him. He just can go on. Well, tragically, what happens to a bully, if he goes on, he ends up in jail, or dead, or takes drugs, or gets taken out of school. Now, what about the poor victim, boy or girl? Depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, self-harming behavior, especially for girls, alcohol, drug use, dependence, aggression, involvement in violence or crime, especially for boys. The most important thing to remember, I mean, you can think, well, their grades are going to go down, because obviously they don't know when they're going to get kicked the next time. They don't know when somebody's going to come and tell them they're horrible online. They don't know when that's going to happen, so of course their grades are going to suffer. So if you see anybody in school, or you have a family member, or you just know somebody who's having these problems, bullying might be the answer. Now, one of the factors for this bullying that people have to remember is that they are more likely to commit suicide than any other type of bullying. You could be psychologically or emotionally attacked by a family member or your husband or wife, but if you are being bullied in school or online, you might think about suicide. So this is something to consider. I'm going to read a poem, and then I'm going to have 2 words, and then I'm going to be off this podium. The poem is called Words Hurt. It came out of the Family, Friend, and Poems Society in August 2012. It was written by a 15-year-old girl who was bullied. You should know bullying hurts. It starts with one word you blurt. Fat, ugly, worthless. These are the words they hear. Did you know you're their biggest fear? Day by day, you torment them. It takes so long for their hearts to mend. All they ask is for one true friend, but you make them want their lives to end. Every day they wake up with regret. All they want to do is forget. It's not just hitting and punching, it's the word you say. They hurt so much they want to fade away. This is when enough is enough. They're sick of playing strong, sick of playing tough. But they know they can make it through. You may not have known, but they always knew. They put on a fake smile and pretend they're okay. They believe they can make it all the way. Of course, your words still offend, but they have been pieced back together again. Someone leaves the crowd and lends them a hand. They learn that it's time to stand. Their smile is no longer fake. Now they have no reason to ache. You see, all they ever needed was a friend, someone to stand by them when the bullying came again. Now they are free. The insults barely sting, don't you see? The bully is never wanted unless wanted to leave. The person you bullied now has no need for long sleeves. Your work here is done, not that it should have started. Now who's the one who feels brokenhearted? Bullying gave you power when they refused to give. You can't help but wonder, what if? What if they didn't get so strong? What if they were crumbled all along? What you don't think of is what could have been. What if they pulled a razor to their skin? What if you pushed them too far to where they tied a rope around their collar? What if they wrote down all the secrets they had to spill right before taking an overdose on pills? You don't know what could have been. You were doing it all for fun. You think they're losers, but they're stronger than you. Have you seen what they've been through? With your words, you gave a black eye. They are leaving, bully, so say your goodbye. But one more thing before you go. Did you enjoy my little show? Remember, words can hurt more than the punch. Believe me now, because this was just a hunch. Before I depart, I would like to thank the GFWC, that's the Greater Federation of Women's Club, who has over the years sponsored our program tooth and nail. They're also sponsoring my presentation tomorrow, which will be a little longer. I would also like to mention we have a Facebook page if anybody wants to find us, comment. We're also looking for anybody who wants to volunteer to help us. We had 3 meetings this year, just 3, and one of them was to pass out our goodie bag, our promotional items. So if you have 3 hours for a whole year to help us out, we'd appreciate it. Also, I think that's it, actually. Thank you, Board of Selectmen. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Ray. All right.
Thank you what you do on behalf of, children who are, as we all know, just as you've said, and have said in past years, are vulnerable and need somebody to advocate for them.
Thank you again, Sally. Okay, Mary, your hand's up, so I'll call on you next, okay? Mary had her hand up, so go right ahead, Mary.
Mary White, Summer Lane. Well, the doctor is still in the statute, the town's ordinance, I mean. And travel to and from is still out. Let's see. So, 4th paragraph under definitions, we have the language, the first selectman is questioning the death of a police officer or firefighter. Was it in the performance of duties or line of duty? So what I see happening here is we're gonna consult with the town attorney, which I don't have a problem with. The town attorney can give the legal point of view. But the town attorney is not a police officer, is not a firefighter, and we're going to consult with a licensed medical professional who is not a firefighter, who is not a police officer, and has no firefighter experience and no police experience. So now we have those people versus, okay, we're going to consult with the fire chief and the fire commission, or consult with the police chief and the police commission. So what I see happening here potentially is we have 2 individuals with no professional experience in fire or police making a decision, okay, which could be the opposite of the decision or determination by the professionals. So we have those 2 individuals basically vetoing, okay, what the professionals may determine. And I don't see that is really what we want to set up, because what's going to end up happening is the town's going to be suffered with another layer of litigation. That's almost a definite. So, so we have some facts. The fact is that the licensed medical professional, the doctor, is not in the state statute. Another fact, the doctor, the licensed medical professional, is not in other towns' ordinances for the tax abatement, for the death in the line of duty, for a police officer or firefighter. What we also have as a fact is we have travel to and from work are not in the state statute, and it is not in our proposed ordinance. Okay, so in certain situations, we want to abide by the state statute and follow the state statute, but we're over-analyzing this. It's becoming very complicated, and I think it's completely unnecessary. So what I would suggest is that the language of the medical the licensed medical professional, that be removed. It's not needed, since they are not determining the cause of death. They're a medical person. This is where they come from. You have a medical examiner for the autopsy. You have the professionals, the fire chief and fire commission, the police chief, the police commission. You have the town attorney from the legal point of view. That's more than enough. And lastly, I wanted to say that I agree with Bill that you should include EMTs in the ordinance in such a way so that it's understanding that it's EMTs that live in the town of North Haven but work for another municipality. And that's all. Well, especially since it clearly says or emergency medical technician. I mean, it's very clear in the state statute, so it's very important we put that in.
Mary, I have a question for you. All of the statutes, all of the ordinances that I've seen include the second sentence in that paragraph. It does not include deaths that could just have likely occurred while not in the performance of such duties. And that it ended there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, would you prefer that?
Yeah, see, what I'm saying is it's being overanalyzed. And what's happening is we're introducing more people, and, perhaps when I'm finished, Tom will come up at some point, and he'll remind, we have a living example, okay,
Right.
of a doctor, a licensed medical professional, who did determine that a police officer's death was not in the line of duty. So I view that as it's a mistake, and mistakes happen. And thank God things were reversed and it worked out for the family. But, I just feel like there's too many words. You're introducing this, I have a big problem because a licensed medical professional has gone to medical school. Their point of view, their experience is medical, but they're not being asked to utilize their expertise in that regard. They're not asking to determine the cause of death. They're there to make a determination where they have absolutely no experience.
Well, again, this sentence that I read before is in all ordinances, and our town attorney included it in every one of the drafts, including the first one of our ordinance, and it just ended there. It does not include deaths that could just have likely occurred while not in the performance of such duties.
Mm-hmm.
Period, and the end of the description of performance of duty, or line of duty as they use. So to me, that was like, how is that going to be determined? It does not include deaths that could just have likely occurred. It's in all the ordinances. How do you make that determination?
Well,
I suggested originally a doctor. Everybody freaked out. So I'm trying to make it more inclusive by including the chief and the commission and the Board of Selectmen. Only in situations where it's not clear. I think in most cases it will be clear and none of this will be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But
well,
so that's my question. Would you prefer that big paragraph just ended with that sentence?
Well,
as vague as it is.
Well, the other ordinances, from what you're saying, end it there.
Yeah.
So if they have a situation where, God forbid, they have a firefighter or they have a police officer that potentially has died while in the performance of their duties. So what would happen? I don't think we have to get so specific as to what our program is going to do, because the other towns did not. So we can say, well, in the case where there's a question, of course you would consult. We would know to consult. Why are we writing it exactly what we're going to do? You know what I'm saying?
So,
there's common sense that we have to say, steps need to be taken. And one of the steps, which I would say, it doesn't have to be written, but it's like if things are understood, that if there is a question, okay?
That's what this
We're going to
says.
know. People are going to know that there's a question, okay? And so before this, this family is awarded or granted under the tax abatement, this determination, because there's a question, so the determination needs to be made. Well, again, common sense, we look to the professionals. We look to the professionals. I don't have a problem with the town attorney as part of our internal program, what we're doing. The town attorney can be consulted from the legal point of view. But it's just when we're bringing in this licensed medical professional who, it's just the fact that they make mistakes, they're not in there for their medical expertise, they're asking to come to a determination, and you need about the determination if the line of duty was, during death, was the death happened during the line of duty or performance of the duties. And like I said, they don't have that expertise. We're asking someone to come in and give an opinion, and that, like I said, and that opinion would be setting up possibly town attorney and the medical professional. They may say, well, I don't think that's in the performance of the duties, but then you have the firefighter and the fire chief, fire commission, police chief, police commission. Those are their professionals. It's almost as if, I don't think the professionals are really professional enough. We need to bring in, somebody who's not a professional. It's not logical to me. And since it's like I said, it's too wordy. We'll figure it out. It's not like, oh my goodness,
you
we have to deal with
acknowledge
this
that
all
there
the time.
might be a situation where some sort of determination is necessary.
Well, what I acknowledge is the fact that, nothing is 100%, and it's possible that it could be not obvious. But why do we have to put it in writing exactly what we're going to do? We're intelligent people, we're educated people, we're going to figure it out. But I definitely feel like, we don't need to have all that in there. We're gonna figure it out. And I think, it's not going to be like, it's going to, we want to cover as people who are the family deserving, and I just think now we're getting in a situation, like I said, with that language, it's very possible what I talked about you have three entities, town attorney, medical professional versus the professionals, and you got a veto situation, and then the Board of Selectmen has to come in, and then they have to figure out, well, are we going to go with the medical professional, or are we going to go with the town attorney, or then we're going to go here? It's going to work out, but to put it in writing that this is exactly what we're going to do, not necessary.
Well,
Absolutely
I think
not necessary.
that if you have a sentence like this in here that says it does not include deaths that could just have likely occurred while not in the performance of such duties, that you would need some sort of process in those unusual events. And so you and I see it differently.
Yes, we do.
It's hard. I don't think it's going to be necessary very often at all. But if it is necessary, I think it's nice to have a process built in. And I think it's nice that the ultimate decision is with the three most accountable people in this government, which is the Board of Selectmen that are elected every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that accountability, we are accountable. We are the chief administrative board, and I see nothing wrong with the Board of Selectmen, who are accountable to the people at the polls and as being the final. It's not easy getting elected first selectman. The first selectman is going to play a major role, and I have confidence in the integrity not only of this first selectman, but future first selectman, because it's not easy to get elected.
Okay. But ultimately, the state statute does not have a licensed medical professional in there. And ultimately, the other ordinances do not have a licensed medical professional in there. And I think that if we want to continue to be like the state statute, follow the state statute, and be similar to the other town ordinances for tax abatement, which exclude the travel to and from. So I think I don't agree with it, but I understand it, that we can't legally put something in there that's not covered under the state statute.
Well,
But again, I really
Okay.
think it's a mistake to just,
Great.
to do this. I disagree
But the-
wholeheartedly,
Yeah.
because they're not necessary.
The purpose of the ordinance is to decide for us what the statute, how we are going to comply with performance of duties. That's why it's defined, and then there's a process to decide if there's a problem with that definition. So we're not adding to the statute. We are complying with the statute by determining what is meant by performance of duties, and all of the ordinances define that. Thank you.
Before Mary
Yeah.
goes,
So
just
me-
let me ask Mary a question, Bill, then turn it over to you. I
excuse
know
me.
Al has his hand up back there. So Mary, it almost sounded like that this language suggests a process. You agree that there should be something, if there's a question. Do you have a sentence that you would think should replace this? Because you mentioned there's too many words here. Would you want to think about that before the town meeting and maybe
Yes.
present it at the town meeting?
Sure.
Because it seems like you're acknowledging there should be, if there's a question,
Right.
there should be something, right?
Right.
Maybe think about that and present it on April
No,
20th.
she said, we'll figure it out at that time with our common sense.
But I'm
You said you don't
open,
want.
I'm open to what Mike is suggesting.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood you. I thought you said you don't want.
If there, I didn't know that Mike was going to say what he just said.
Okay.
So because he said what he just said, then I'm taking that into consideration, and I can write a sentence.
Okay,
that I
because you said
think-
you didn't want anything in writing, but now you're open to,
Originally,
Okay.
that's what I wanted, because I didn't know there was an option,
there's always options.
okay, for me to
Come up
come
with
up
a-
with a sentence.
Come up with a sentence, okay?
Sure.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
But
you.
Mary, before you go,
Ray, I got Al next, he's had his hand up, then I'll come to you, okay? Go ahead, Bill.
well, I was just going to finish with Mary's point, though. Now, I'm looking at it like at East Hampton, and, language that I don't particularly like, and maybe where our language does make sense. Like, it says, line that means duty that occurs while firefighter, emergency medical technician, police officer performing an action solely related to performance of the regular work or as part of it. Then it goes, it does not include deaths that could have just likely occurred while not on duty. Now, what the heck does that mean?
Well, that's
Yeah.
pretty much the same thing.
See, and
this
I think that's what we're trying to maybe get around, is say, is that, that pretty vague, is what is death that's, it does not include deaths that could have just likely occurred while not on duty. How do you determine that? Who determines that?
Yeah.
So, that language is pretty
Yeah,
odd,
Yeah.
I can't.
agree. Yeah.
So I think, the other statutes have some, so I think that was an attempt to make sure that if it wasn't completely obvious, that we could have at least a way to figure out, whether it would qualify. The other
Okay.
thing too is, I think when I really reread it closely, like, if you're called in on an emergency basis to fire, while answering alarms or fires are called in by your chief or, that almost then says there are occasions where you could be traveling for mutual aid to another location, to the firehouse. So as opposed to maybe just regularly commuting in, there's almost, I think, language within both the police and fire duties to say that responding to lawful orders or requests for, assistance or mutual aid that you're called in to help are actually covered, as opposed to just regular commuting.
Well, that's 100%. That's exactly what we were saying
Yeah.
last month.
Yeah.
And, but there's such pushback on it. So,
So,
it's up to you guys, but my understanding is, I spoke with Valerie today, and my understanding is that if we were to put the travel to and from work is excluded, and then maybe in parentheses,
Or
put
regular
some.
travel.
Regular travel to
Regular
and from work
commuting
is excluded.
on a
but in
non-emergency basis,
parentheses, with the exception of special circumstances or unusual circumstances. Valerie thought that the town attorney would say that
Regular.
that would be not in compliance with the state statute. So that's kind of where we're at with that, because I certainly would definitely, because I think if a firefighter is not on duty and he's called in, and like the fire commission's example with the hurricane, and he's going into work and a tree falls on the car and he's tragically killed, oh, well, sorry, no tax abatement for your family. You know what I mean? And the same thing with an unusual circumstance where a firefighter, for example, is, working a 36-hour shift, which is not his normal shift. And then he's coming home and he has a massive heart attack. He's in the car for 60 seconds and he has a massive heart attack. Oh, sorry, you should have had that massive heart attack 60 seconds earlier at the firehouse. No tax abatement for your family. So there's certain situations where I wholeheartedly agree, but I don't know if it's legal for us to do it. And that's where
Mary, I think
I'm
what
at.
I said, just to clarify.
Okay.
I think what I said is the reason why the town attorney chose to keep that sentence in, travel to and from the place of business is not considered in the performance of duties, is because it was in all of the other, consistently in all of the other ordinances, and he felt that it also complied with the statute. That, I believe that's what I said.
Okay.
That's why I think he put it in the initial draft as well,
Right,
because
right.
to
And I can
comply
make the
with.
argument, like, based on the fact pattern you just gave us, that those are extraordinary circumstances
Right.
that are covered under fire duties where you're
Right.
responding to.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, I agree.
you've done things that are within the performance of duty, beyond the performance of duty, that should qualify for,
I agree.
All right, Mary will come up.
So I think
with
we're
a sentence.
agreeing in many
Yes, we are.
respects.
All right, let's hear now. I know we've had
I'm sorry.
other
I'm
hands
sorry,
up.
Mike.
I know, Al, you've been patiently waiting, then I'll go to Ray, and then anyone else. Al, the podium is yours.
Al Warren, Charles Court. There it is, right there. 31 years I spent. When it comes to the fire department and the police department, it's, I would think that the first thing you're going to do before you hire this person is give them a good physical. And I think there's no better way of looking at things is to look at the procedure that the fire department in Boston, Massachusetts goes through. It was written up that the physical and the yearly physical, before and after you come on duty, was written up by a firefighter who is now a doctor. And I think it's one hell of a thing to look at. The other thing is when you say firefighter, police, firefighter, and EMT, some towns, the EMTs are usually on an ambulance and ambulance only. You don't get involved in any fires or anything. You can also have police and firefighters that are EMTs also. Some of the towns don't have EMTs or ambulances in their jurisdiction. It'll take time for somebody to get there. So the policeman is going to, usually two policemen are going to be performing emergency procedures on the patient. The other thing is if you're going to get yearly physicals, have them done by somebody at occupational health. Or if you want them to get a physical before, you can go to occupational health. And Yale has a big program down there. That's where I went. When it comes to line of duty, can a town order an autopsy? The attorney. Because if they say, well, we don't know what he died of, now you're going to go to either a clinical person or the town attorney and ask them, what do you think? Can that attorney order an autopsy? And the other thing you can look at is, did somebody call occupational health? And did they do a background on what happened? And if the firefighter is going to and from work, now if the guy spent 2 hours at a fire and is traveling home from work and stops someplace and then gets home 2 hours later and has a myocardial infraction, what then? So that's some of the questions I would give you, you know. Cancer is one of the big ones. And with me, even between cancer and an injury on the fire department that makes it so you cannot perform the duty anymore. is the town willing to not fight for workman's comp, or to fight for workman's comp for that firefighter? If they get hurt in the line of duty and cannot continue in the line of duty, especially with cancer and an injury. Responding to and from a fire, I've covered after you perform operational duties. Say you go to a fire and now you're going home and you get in an accident and something happens to you and you can't perform your duties again. Again, that's something to look into in workman's comp. To and from work, I covered Boston, line of duty, occupation, and the EMTs, like I said, are an ambulance only, and the fire police are all covered too. And the physicals should be yearly, and not by your local doctor. It should be done by a professional person. Like I said, Yale's occupational health will do it. Yale did with my, when I was diagnosed with bladder cancer, Yale Occupational Health did the whole thing for me so I could put it in for workman's comp, but unfortunately, I'm still waiting since 2005. With now, the new bill that was passed in Hartford this year, firefighters with cancer, it's good, but you better catch your cancer before 5 years is up because they're not going back past 5 years. That's it.
Thank you,
Okay?
Al.
Okay.
Raymond?
I am not a doctor. I am not a lawyer. I am not a fireman. I'm not a policeman. But I do have a question. What's going on here? We're talking about the families of people who serve this government. I want to talk for the people, the firemen and the policemen who are affected by this ordinance. You know, I stand here tonight, and everybody knows I served as a Marine in Vietnam. Right now, as I stand here, I have Chester's disease, Parkinson's disease, neurological problems, gastronomic problems. I've had a stroke, and I'm in high risk for heart attack for something that happened 56 years ago, something called Agent Orange. It just took a while to catch up to me. Now, could any of those things happen to anybody? Yeah, you bet. But show me somebody who didn't serve in Vietnam who's got all four at one time, like many of us Vietnam guys did. Sometimes the effects of what you do are not immediate. Sometimes it takes time. And we stand here tonight quibbling about legal speak, talking about words, when you've got families of firefighters and police officers who need a couple of bucks in terms of a tax abatement. What are we talking about here? 3-4 times a year, if that much, for a couple of $1,000s each? I mean, you'll excuse me, but at a $130 million budget, we're quibbling over like $12,000 to $14,000. That's beer money. It's ridiculous to sit here and talk legalese. We're talking about lives. We're talking about human lives. We're talking about people who need a simple couple of $1,000s break so they can feed their family because their primary loved one is dead. What's going on here? This is ridiculous. for a couple of words, for a sentence here, a sentence there. I'm telling you from experience. My doctor sat with me last Friday, and she said to me, Ray, I know you were wounded in Vietnam, but I got to tell you something. Your illnesses caused by Agent Orange came a lot closer to killing you than any enemy ever did. It was only 8.5 years ago that the federal government, in all its wisdom, with about 1,000 lawyers and about 10,000 doctors, decided that Agent Orange was even a disease, even an illness. Whether I was in the military system or whether I was in the VA system, they couldn't even treat me when all of this was starting to develop in my body. I say, get this ordinance passed. Get it done. The legalese, sell that later, if you have to. We're talking about human lives here. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fowler, if it was up to me, in January, once we added the volunteers and the North Haven citizens who worked as first responders in other municipalities were also added, it could have been done in January.
Well,
I don't know how the rest of I don't know how the two of you feel, but that's how.
Well, I think part of the.
When those two big things were done, I was ready to vote yes.
Well, to Ray's point, though,
Yeah.
is the problem is not with our ordinance, it's with the state statute. And I think the state statute actually says, while in the performance of such officers' duties. As opposed to, if, I think it's relatively vague and narrowly constricted. And I brought up at the last meeting, if you recall, if you listened to the meeting, is why doesn't it, from us, me being also a veteran, why doesn't it include, reservists, National Guard, active duty people who have died in the line of duty or the performance of duty, that we can give them an abatement? And the reason is well, we can't do that because the Connecticut general statute doesn't allow that. And actually, what you're saying too, actually, would, if this was going to be crafted right, would not only be while in the performance of duty, but your illness and what we talked about in terms of both police and fire and all kinds of other things are really as a result of their performance of duty. In terms of heart problems, lung problems due to inhaling toxic chemicals at fires. So unfortunately, we're constrained by the legislature drafting a fairly vague and narrow
No, my
statute.
good friend, two wrongs never make a right.
We can't do it, though. We can't do something that the statute doesn't allow.
Well, how about getting our state legislatures to change the ordinance?
Well, the problem is that that's the, and that's another conversation. It's very hard to get anybody at the state level to do anything. You know that.
Well, I'll tell you what I tried to do in the beginning, and you don't even know this, okay? Once there were line of duty deaths that were determined, I went to the town attorney and I said, before I even knew about the statute, do I have the authority as a chief elected official and the chief executive officer, based on the designation of a line of duty death, to get this done right away? Do I have that authority? And the answer came back, absolutely not, Mike.
No.
You've got to go through the process of an ordinance. And then it was cited with this state statute. In the beginning, I just wanted to get this done. Line of duty deaths were declared, so I wanted to move forward with it. But my hands are tied, and that's what happened, so. Tom White.
Tom White, Summer Lane. So I suggest the elimination of the licensed medical professional because I believe the cause of death is going to be determined by the medical examiner's office, and you're going to have enough information based on that to move forward. My reasoning is because of what occurred in the Officer Robert Fumiati scenario. And I also agree with and support Bill Piper's suggestion that an EMT employed by a municipal emergency medical service be included in the ordinance. I'm going to shift over to procurement. With the many years I had as a manager with New Haven PD, I was frequently involved in the bidding process for vehicle procurement and other things. And Connecticut DAS served as an excellent resource for me because I was always allowed to default to the Connecticut state bid if it was lower than any of the bids that I received. And because of their ability to purchase in great volumes, they were oftentimes given excellent pricing. So I thought, along with any of the basic things that you were looking to purchase, to bring in the state bid process to help you with that, and Mike, with your connections and affiliations, you may be able to expand that to go to other goods and services that you're looking for the town, because more buying power gets better discounts.
Agreed. Totally agree.
That's my suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Tom Haggerty. Just for purposes of identification, Tom is our Fire Department Union President. Tom, good to see you.
Good evening. Tom Haggerty, Windsor Road East, and as you said, Union President for the North Haven Professional Firefighters Association. Thank you guys for putting this much time in on this. The fact that the town considers things like this it means a lot to guys, at least my guys anyways. I think a lot of questions are being asked because maybe we don't have full knowledge of how the whole process works. The first one being the definition of what is a line of duty death, or the line that you guys have this big concern with about including deaths that just have likely occurred while in the performance of duties. There's already a process for this. So when you have somebody that dies in the line of duty, they're not just applying for a tax abatement, they're applying for workers' comp death benefits, they're applying for PSOB benefits. In both of those scenarios, they have to go through an application process, and the claim has to get vetted. It has to get vetted by administrators, it has to get vetted by lawyers and doctors. So there's already going to be a doctor that says this is a line of duty death because of cardiovascular stress or occupational cancer. So I don't know that you necessarily need to redefine something that is going to be defined several times for that family. In terms of going to and from work, workers' comp, I watched the March meeting, workers' comp does cover the employee portal to portal. And it doesn't matter if you're a fireman, a cop, a public works worker, a clerk for the grocery store, if you are killed on your way to work, you are covered by workers' comp. They get, the eligible spouse or eligible beneficiary gets that benefit. So I didn't want that conversation in the last meeting to influence a decision on how we write this ordinance, because that's not true. The one example that I kind of see being an issue with the way that it's worded is, I'll go back to the occupational cancer. Over time, we put the gear on and off. We live in a diesel-filled environment in the apparatus bays, even though we have, diesel reclaimers and things like that. And the firefighters, we end up being exponentially more prone to certain types of cancers. And this is where that cancer bill has kind of stemmed from, that we've gotten passed into the state legislature the past couple of years and have worked towards funding appropriately. The way that this is written, do you guys see somebody who works for 20 years for the North Haven Fire Department getting cancer, or any firefighter that lives in town, getting cancer, subsequently dying from that cancer, being eligible for this benefit? I think that's the question that my membership has.
That was my point about where the statute says, while in the performance of such officer's duty, that was my point, where the language in the state statute should be as a result.
As a result, yeah.
Right.
Not while in the performance.
I got that cancer as a result of putting that gear on every day that I went to work. I got that cancer as a result of being in a diesel-filled environment for a certain period of time of day. Those are the things that get hashed out with the workers' comp benefits and the PSOB benefits. And both of those benefits cover portal to portal as well. They go, PSOB goes I think 38 hours past when you get off of work. So the language that's causing a lot of the issues for everybody, I think can be solved just by looking at those two things. If you look at the definitions for workers' comp or look at the definitions for PSOB, most of these things are already getting resolved by the time this person's applying for a tax abatement. And kind of having them apply for another benefit and to have another medical professional look at it and to have another this, another that look at it, it's another thing that this family's going to have to do in the process of what they've already just been through.
Okay.
So, if anybody has questions about those things, I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk with anybody.
So the person won't be applying for, unfortunately, because this abatement is for the surviving spouse.
Yeah, well, the spouse has to apply for the death benefits
For those death
through PSOB and workers' comp as well. So that's the person that has to apply for all
But
of
the
this.
fireman can apply for workman's comp, based on those conditions, while he's alive.
For cancer?
Right,
For cancer, yes.
right.
I'm
Or for heart
I'm
condition.
speaking specifically for death benefits.
Right. So this really only applies to an abatement for the surviving spouse.
Yeah, I'm solely speaking about a spouse applying for death benefits. When the spouse applies for those death benefits, somebody dies, and you're gonna question the cancer diagnosis or the cardiovascular. I mean, obviously, a guy dying on scene is a different story. It's an easy one. I understand that there's gonna be easy ones.
But in most cases, he would have applied already before he died.
For cancer? For cancer, yes, hopefully, if they
Or
caught it.
congestive heart situation.
If he caught it, yes.
So Tom, let me ask you, based on how you just described this, when you look at that language, and we talked earlier with Mary, she was suggesting it become, it's too wordy, become simplified. She's going to come up with a sentence. How do you see that? What do you see in terms of rewording that?
I think all you need to do to define it is use the definitions that are already there. Just use the PSOB definition or the workers' comp definition. I don't necessarily think that it needs to be redefined.
Okay. As part of your suggestion to add the language of workman's comp, PSOB, in there?
I mean, I would like to kind of talk that out further, but
Okay.
something along that lines. Yeah, I think that might make it a simpler situation, and it's less work for the town to
Yep.
do. Because if the family hashes out a PSOB benefit, that's somebody else doing all the work
Right.
that you guys want to do here.
Mhm.
So, arguably it saves you time and money because, who's the doctor going to be? And what type of doctor? Is a general practitioner going to argue against an oncologist in this scenario? Are we hiring cardiologists? Are we hiring OC Health? There's more questions when you include tertiary doctors like this. There's more questions than just, I want to make sure that this is a legit claim.
Tom, the average person watching and the people here may not know PSOB. Can you explain that to the average citizen here?
Yeah, so I think Sally kind of brought it before, public safety officer benefit, that's a federal benefit.
Yeah.
That is, police and fire are entitled to when they die in the line of duty. There are certain criteria that you have to meet in order to be eligible for that benefit, and you need to have certain eligible beneficiaries in order to receive it. So we have had instances in North Haven where we have had line of duty deaths with no eligible beneficiary. So it's not just a given thing. It is a vetted benefit.
All right.
And their test is whose death, correct me if I'm wrong, the death is the direct and proximate result of a traumatic injury sustained in the line of duty. That's what I got.
There's more.
Okay, more, there's a longer
There's more
definition?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's things that include death within 38 hours after like a qualifying event, like a structure
Okay.
fire or extraneous activity during shift, that kind of stuff.
Well, then we have a problem with complying with the statute if we start going that far.
I don't know
That's
that
the
you
problem.
need to,
So do you-
I don't think that the state statute would go against state workers' comp law. I think that would
that's-
kind of be silly if they wrote a statute that directly,
I disagree. The workers' comp is within the scope of employment. right?
They offer a workers' comp death benefit, correct?
Yes, if the death was within the scope of
Right.
employment.
Why
So
would-
Scope.
Why would this statute not cover that?
That's a good question. I mean, that's why the ordinances define performance of duty. Our first definition is performance of duty death means the death occurs while the firefighter or police officer is performing an action solely related to performance of their regular work or as part of it. Do you agree with that definition?
Yeah, but I don't think you're looking at the whole definition. I could easily argue that the role of putting on my gear that gave me cancer is part of my regular duties, right? Would you agree that I have to put that gear on if I'm gonna go?
Absolutely.
I have to, right? I don't have a choice.
Right, right.
It's either that or burn.
No, we don't want that.
We don't want that one, because that one's
No.
clear cut. That's easy.
I support the
so-
new purchase of your new equipment
Yeah, I
in this
appreciate that.
budget, fully.
So if we look at it in terms of all the things that we have to do, not just the ugly things, that definition changes. And I don't know that you need to redefine it outside of the other agencies already having it been defined. It's defined. It doesn't
Well-
say it doesn't say that it has to be defined by you.
So I think, again, we're
Well,
back
every
to
ordinance defines
the
it.
way the
Yeah.
statute is poorly written.
Yeah.
Who dies in the performance of duty.
Who dies
So-
while in the performance, that word while, that's the problem.
As opposed to,
But,
you know,
like-
and again, you're, you know, what I was arguing for before, or in favor of before, is that, you know, it could be decades before, you know, that event happens. You know, and then you don't get anything till, and you would never get anything from it as a firefighter. Your spouse would maybe 20 years later or something, so. So,
I think
you know,
if
so I
you're-
don't think they envisioned that when they wrote the statute, that they really narrowly, unfortunately, constructed it to be while in the performance of duty versus as
Yeah,
a,
I just
as a
think it, I
result of.
think it depends on how you view while in the performance of duty. I think that people that are on the job and people that do the job think about it more than just being at the call.
Right. But see,
Or
20
driving
years
to the
later,
call.
you may finally die, and you're no longer on duty, you've been off duty for 20 years.
But did I get the disease that killed me while I was performing the duties of my job?
As a result of, but not while, see? So I mean, those are I think the legislature's left us with some difficult language.
Okay.
And that's where I
Well-
really objected to the fact that it didn't include, you know, Connecticut National Guard. I was in the Connecticut National Guard, I was in the reserves, and I was on active duty. And it didn't include people, you know, that might have served, like Ray,
Yeah,
who
I'm
was a
surprised that
retired
isn't something
Marine.
that's already available. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have the town attorney at the
Unfortunately.
town meeting, right? So I highly recommend, firefighter.
I would
that-
say, yeah.
That you attend and ask the town attorney that very question.
Yeah,
I would be
I would-
interested to know his answer.
Absolutely.
And Tom's
I
kind of
would,
brought that up too, with
Right.
I
officers
would
from
appreciate you
beyond.
consider just
Yeah.
think about that while we get to that.
I'd even take it a step further with Tom. If you want to send me something in writing, we'll send it to Jeff and see, and we can share it with you and
Yeah,
you,
sure.
Sally, and Bill, rather than wait till the town meeting, okay? And we keep you posted too, if you want to do that,
I
okay?
appreciate that.
You know, folks, in retrospect, I wonder what would have happened if I had just called the town meeting to create an ordinance just to address the two families that are in question. Would have simplified this whole thing and have the town vote on it. I'm
And
wondering.
then not have an ordinance in place for future.
Or we would then work on a future ordinance.
Oh,
Just to
okay.
get,
Well, like I said, I thought we were ready to go
Yeah, I know.
in January.
I know.
Once we made those two major
Right.
expansions.
Yeah, it goes back to what I opened the meeting up with, that, you know, we're trying to balance, trying to get something in place for the families who have gone through this tragedy here in town, but also balancing the hundreds of emails and calls we get, people offering input. And that's the difficult part. Mrs. Caldwell.
Yeah.
Hi, Jenny Colwell, 69 Kimberly Circle. First, I just want to say, I know you guys have been discussing this for several months, but unfortunately, you know, I think we could have avoided some of this had the parties that are involved, been, been involved in the conversation, because the person who actually brought this up to the fire commission was Pat Brown, the chief, and the chair of the commission didn't really know anything about it. So I think some of this discussion could have happened earlier on, in terms of the concerns. When you're talking about the statute and being compliant with the statute is very simple. It doesn't have all of these exclusions, and it talks about who dies while in the performance as such officer or firefighter or technician's duties. That is very broad and doesn't necessarily limit what you can define as that. And I think, to your point, what does that mean while performing your duties? I think, other towns have chosen to exclude travel to and from work, but I strongly believe that if you call a firefighter or a police officer in to work while in, some sort of, they're at home, they're safe, and we call them in order to serve our town, they are performing their duties, leaving their homes and traveling to the town. So that is a choice to include that. Just because other towns have it doesn't mean, you said it earlier, this is our ordinance. We get to choose how we want it worded. So I personally think that should be removed because, again, as Tom was saying, there is a process for deciding whether a death would be considered a line of duty death or which to me means while performing the duties of the police officer or the firefighter. That, and again, that wording of, that the death would not just have likely have occurred someplace else. Again, there's already a process to decide whether it's a death that occurred while performing the duties or determining whether it's a line of duty death. And to have a group, a big concern with the way it's written now is now you have a group of people deciding. And what if the group doesn't agree? Then who is the tiebreaker? And that seems to me to be problematic.
The Board of Selectmen is, according to this.
And I think that's problematic when you've got a process to decide whether something's a line of duty death, and instead you're going to have the selectmen who don't necessarily have the background or the knowledge to know whether it's a line of duty death or not. So those would be my issues. I will be attending. As it's written right now, I again, as I said last month, I strongly agree with the idea and of giving a tax abatement to the spouse of a firefighter or police officer who dies in the line of duty. My concern is that the language excludes families who should not be excluded as it is written currently. So I won't be supporting it as it's written currently. Hopefully some of the suggestions that people will bring, that you guys are going to consider, will end up in the ordinance. So, thank you.
Al?
You can help me with, I have to ask, can I ask you a question? In North Haven, with the volunteers, there's some that man the firehouses now too, right?
They usually respond to the houses when they're.
Oh, if something goes in, the full-time guys go.
Yep.
Right? And the volunteers, they're not at the firehouse, they don't sleep there or anything like that?
They don't sleep there, they may or may not be there, just sleeping
Okay,
there.
so
or
when they
maybe
respond,
just,
do they go to the firehouse first and then come? That's line of duty. Okay.
I know, we can go, see, that's what we're up against. We can go back and forth, right? There's always different scenarios.
It's like calling, you're calling for somebody else in another town. And they might have the same type of volunteers where they would come out with their blue lights.
Yes.
So now they're responding.
So I can argue, Al, that's covered though, because it does say, while answering alarms of fires.
Yeah.
So we did kind of, versus just routine,
That's
Yeah,
right.
but even with, like you said.
answering alarms for fire seems
these
like that
guys-
would
these
cover
guys
what
are
you
home
just said.
sleeping, And that, not only they need the volunteers, they're responding in their car.
Yep,
So,
they're coming for an alarm, so.
That's
They're-
right. I
they're
think
just
they
not
would be
commuting.
covered under that paragraph 2.
It would, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it could be, I think that overrides the other steps. But we understand, I think we're, I think we're not necessarily talking it, or at cross purposes or disagreeing.
So I'm coming back, Sal.
Yeah, we should be paying more attention to paragraphs 2 and 3, or 2 and 5, which define, wait a minute, which define the duties, because that would be covered.
So let me ask you, Sally, and Bill, this, okay? Coming back to what I mentioned a few moments ago, based on all this discussion, I have a feeling this is going to get tabled again. What do you think about if I talk to the attorney about just creating an ordinance to address the two families, and then continue the discussion on creating the ordinance for the future?
So to get it accomplished quicker?
To get it accomplished quicker for the families involved.
Right.
And then continue the discussion and iron this out for the future. And we'd hope that it would never happen again, but God forbid if it does.
Did you discuss that? What does the town attorney think of that process?
No, I'd have to talk to the town attorney.
Yeah, because I don't know how he may respond that then you might be stuck with having two sets of applicable rules, and future people may say, well, we want our own town meeting,
Well, in this scenario.
Hopefully there will never be any more future people at all to ever have to put this into effect. That's what I hope.
In this scenario that I just have come up with tonight, we'd create an ordinance to take care of the two families specifically, and then amend that ordinance for the future by continuing this process and putting in a more formal ordinance for the future.
Are we that far away, though, do you think?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Really?
I mean, the emails are still coming in, and, it's a good thing in one way, because everybody is offering an opinion. You want that in government, of course, we know that here, sitting here. We want to hear the public opinion, but this was my biggest concern, ladies and gentlemen. This has gone on for a long time now. And I started a discussion with the first family over a year ago on this. So that's why I'm wondering if this is an approach, the one I just came up with.
Run it by town council and see what he thinks.
Yep. We'll do that, okay, Val? And then depending on how that goes, if it's a yes, we can do that. That'll be the quickest way to address the two families, for the families. And then we continue the discussion on this and come up with this for the future.
I'm okay with that, why not?
Yeah.
If town council says it's okay with him,
Okay.
I'm not gonna stand in the way of getting benefits to
Right.
people who deserve it. And
'Cause
like I said, let's hope we never have
Right.
to deal with this issue again.
It complies with the part of the statute that says may establish by ordinance.
So
We would just
we're gonna
read-
do an ordinance specifically for
Yeah,
two.
for two, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see what he says about it.
Okay.
Again, I was hoping to have this done sooner. Sometimes a desire for perfection gets in the way of doing good.
Right. It's like we were talking earlier here before the meeting started, that for every scenario that comes up, there could be another 100 scenarios, right?
Exactly.
And that's what I'm concerned with as we continue to move forward. I know I'm going to get emails after this meeting from people watching, adding with some other scenarios, you see? That's why I think it's going to just keep going on and
Yeah,
on.
the hypotheticals are infinite.
Infinite.
And they don't really help in setting a framework for complying with the statute and giving the benefit to an eligible surviving spouse, which is what we want to do.
Right. So we have 7 people here. How many here would support my idea?
What did you say, supported?
Support the idea I just came up with.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's unanimous.
Now we got to see if we can get it done. But I have to, just so everyone knows, I'd like to do it that way. We've got to get town council involved. We have to ensure that it's done legitimately in accordance with rules and regulations, and Jeff would be able to tell us that, I think. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And we'll see if we can get it done, all right? Okay. Any other comments? All right. Motion to adjourn?
You have to announce the
Oh,
next meeting.
next meeting, yes.
It's on our agenda.
Can you already do that?
Oh, I did,
before-
yeah.
that was
Did we do
before
that
public.
before public comment?
before
I'm
public
sorry.
We already did
I
that.
don't know. This is only my 150th meeting. I forgot the order. Okay.
All those in, motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.